Okay, well, I don't know where that ended, folks. Just trying to make sure we have the class for our online folks, our online peoples. So, let's see. Hopefully we'll have to go through and double check where that all ended. But, so we have our intro of George walking to the nice part of town with a tuxedo. He's in the alleyway reading the letter of Margaret's Bakery. Okay, and then we have the teenager being introduced, and he's at the development site, and blah, blah, blah. He steals stuff, goes home, and you see his condition of living with his mom, talking about some random man that's going to come spend the night again, which is, just showing kind of the neglect of why he's acting out and everything. And then it shows Margaret, she's praying to her bed, and then George is the Easter Bunny right at the river trail. Homeless guy wants a cigarette, and the single mom is introduced at the food bank asking for food and bread and protein and all that. George is then in the next scene as a leprechaun when the teenager beats him up. And then the single mom again, right? So we go back to the single mom, and then it's George as Santa Claus witnessing the motel assault. And George is waiting and following the pimp to the chaotic drug house. Developers then are pressuring Margaret with the walkaway money. Then Daniel Reyes enters in, right? And he's manipulative, and he says, don't worry, miss, we'll help you get out of this. And Margaret didn't want either of them, city developers or this weird businessman that came in. And then there's the nighttime meeting, and George talks to Daniel, God can use anyone. Okay, then there's the protest at dawn, interrupting the demolition and the media coverage. Margaret's story starts spreading all over town. Then she's sitting in the office with the mayor. And the mayor's, pissed off, but tells her he has no choice but to just let her keep her business and keep it up and running. And then we have the montage, right? Going back and forth from the single mom crying and the teenager running away from whatever crime he caused this time. Okay, and then he ends up at the camp with George and has a heart-to-heart. It's a beautiful scene. And then so George tells him the duck story, the duck boots. And the teenager, for the first time in the movie, seems to be kind. He says, thank you, Okay, and then there's Margaret's dinner celebration. And she decides in her heart that she wants to find that cowboy that kept her bakery up and running. So she gives the teenager more cookies and everything, and an extra message. And then there's this time lapse from daytime to night. Depending on where our Zoom camera ended. Okay, so that's where we are, folks. I just gave you the full list of scenes, so now that we can get to our most important scene. Whew, okay, it's a lot. We got a lot here in this script, folks. A lot, so I hope you're paying attention. I hope you're really paying attention, because we got a lot more heading down the pike. So here we go. Time lapse after a successful business day for Margaret at her bakery, and she's just thrilled. She's thrilled. Everything worked out, and she sees the kid and tells the kid to find George and bring him in here one day. So the kid disappears, and then now we're just seeing a landscape view of the city, and by this point the daylight is fading, and it turns to night. Okay? So now, all of a sudden it's nighttime, and what do we see? We see George. And George is not in a costume. In fact, he's walking towards somewhere, and he's not in a costume. He's just in some old homeless clothes, worn coat, tired fabric, but his hands are in these black gloves. He's wearing these black gloves. Tight. Intentional. Very intentional. And so it's cold enough to see his breath outside, you know. Night times get very cold in Oregon, I'll tell you what, they get very cold. So, and his facial expression is different than any other time in the movie. It's almost evil. It's almost kind of evil looking, and it's not in rage necessarily, but it's in this emptiness and this determination so hard, it looks like darkness. And on the front steps, there's this pimp's house. That's what's going on. Yep. George is walking towards the pimp house, and he shows up, and he walks right up to it, right? And he's on the front steps, and this trashy gangster is sitting there in front of the pimp's house, you know, because this house is an animal house. You know, you have people outside, you got trash everywhere. It's a crack house. You know, they're doing drugs and prostitution. What will you inside there? All kinds of stuff, the bad stuff, you know. And so this trashy gangster is lounging with this beer and this cheap chain and stupid posture and eyes like a stray dog guarding scraps, you know, a pack of wild dogs. So George approaches carefully in a small voice. You know, he's kind of waddling around like that duck in Boots, right? He's waddling around, and he walks up to the gangster, and he says, "Hey, I need some ice. I need some ice." So for all of you that don't know what ice is, and it's not going to be that ice. Yeah, it's not the organization that's been taking people out of this country. No, it's not that ice. It's actually worse ice, if you can imagine. It's a drug. It's a drug. It's a stimulant drug, methamphetamine or crack or whatever this, you know, whatever you can get. But that's what it is. It's street slang, ice. Usually for methamphetamine. And where is it? Okay, and so the gangster's standing there, and he's kind of annoyed. And he says, "Get the fuck out of here, bum. Get out of here." You know, he's like, "Get out of here." He's kind of tweaking out. And George pulls out money, slowly folded bills. He says, "I'll pay. I just need a fix." And the gangster snatches the money, and he counts it, and he hesitates. And the opportunity fights suspicion, you know. He pulls out a lot of money too, by the way. I think like $200, just like way more than anything on the street is even worse, honestly. With, you know, yeah, just the quality of this stuff is, anyway. And so the gangster hesitates. He says, "Okay, well, follow me." And he steps towards the door. And they're both walking towards the door, and then the gangster spins around real fast, and he's explosive. He says, "If you try anything, I will kill you." Right? Just nut job. Then he's back to calm, like flipping a switch. He says, "Okay, follow me, follow me." And he opens the door and leads George in. And the air hits like a wall, smoke and chemicals and sweat. Right, this is just a nasty place. Nasty place. House of trash. There's cans and garbage everywhere. Sticky floors. Broken furniture. There's muffled loud music. Pounds from somewhere deeper within the home. And there's echoes of laughter and sex muffled noises. Mechanical, like noises in the wall. People drift through the haze. There's men with dead eyes, you know, as he walks through the hallway. There's some, you know, just zombie-looking dudes with dead eyes, and there's these women that are hollowed out, bodies moving like nothing matters, and no one looks at George twice. You know, everyone's just kind of numb, trying to get their fix. And they just think he's just another desperate person at the door. And so George follows the gangster down a hallway lined with stained doors and bad lighting, and they pass a room where someone's coughing violently. Right? And a door opens and someone peeks out and then shuts it again. You know, George is in a very, very bad place here. Very, very bad place. But you can assume why he's there. And so, you know, the gangster's still leading him where to go and guiding him way to the back of the house, like he owns the decay of this place. And so, boom, they go through this door, and there's the pimp. Okay, and the pimp is lounging on his bed like a king, like he's the king of garbage. And this trashy-looking couple of women are draped behind or beside him, and they're high as hell, detached, laughing at something that really isn't funny. And the gangster appears, right? He says, "Hey, we gotta sell, chief. We gotta sell, chief. Yeah, we got a guy to sell, chief, man." And the pimp kind of snarls immediately. He's irritated by existence. He says, "The fuck you want, man?" He says, "We gotta sell." And the pimp says, "I don't fucking care. Do that shit outside." The gangster holds up the money, which again is like $200. Okay, it does say here, yeah, the gangster says, 200, 200, 200, man. And the pimp kind of laughs, cruelly. He says, "Okay, fine." And he gets up, hesitates, and he goes to his dresser, and he's rummaging through it like it's nothing. And he pulls out a small bag, an eighth. He pulls out an eighth of ice, of, meth. Which is pathetic for the money that's offered. Okay, we're talking $200, and he gives them an eighth. Oh my goodness. Anyone in that kind of lifestyle would be laughing too. They would be like, "Oh my gosh, you're getting ripped off. That's what's going on." So he tosses it to George like he's feeding a dog. He says, "I'm only giving you an eighth. Consider that mercy." And his eyes are narrowing, enjoying the power. And he says, "Because I should have killed you. And my boy for letting you in here." And George looks at the bag, and then he looks at the pimp. And George has been quiet this whole time, right? And then so he just lets out this big laugh. Too loud for the room. Almost like someone told him the best joke of his life. And then he just kind of looks at the pimp, and he says, "You're too easy." And in one fluid motion, George pulls out a M1911 pistol from his coat. Boom, bam, bam, 2 shots quickly, brutal, sudden, almost like one of those old gangster movies where where fate arrives without warning. The pimp drops. The gangster turns. Boom, another shot. He drops. The women, they're screaming in pure panic. George doesn't look at them. He doesn't threaten them. He doesn't perform. He exits immediately. He moves through the hallway. Another man steps out with his gun. Boom! He shoots him. Out. Gunshot. Down. Another one. Boom! Gunshot. Boom! Down. Another guy. Boom! George goes through 5 more men. Totally quickly. Only reloading once. Controlled, no speeches, no celebration. The music just keeps blasting in the background like the house doesn't understand what just happened. And then silence, except the music, and George breathing. And no more footsteps, no more threats. All the bad guys are gone. So then George steps out of the house back into the cold, and his breath kind of clouds, and he removes the black gloves that he was wearing earlier. Slowly, like taking off a mask, he puts them in his pocket. And he looks over at the house, still loud, still rotten, now missing its teeth. And he walks away into the darkness. So, wow, what a change in the story. We've seen now that our saint, our hero of the movie, has put it upon himself to go and not only kill the pimp, but kill all the, drug dealers and all his little fiends over there. And so, wow, what a twist of events. George has just solved the single mom's issue because he took him out. And George had to do it because the cops weren't going to do it. Her friends weren't going to do it. Her family wasn't going to do it. Nobody was going to do it. Nobody was going to help this poor single mom out of the situation she was in. And so George, being an angel of God, if I be so bold to tell you, an angel of God, decided to do the right thing because the city failed this poor woman. And he pulls a classic, Godfather, Taxi Driver type execution plan where he just kills all these guys. And it's so unexpected. You just don't expect it. But he's still in the right. It's vigilante justice. He's kind of an anti-hero, if you will. But, So that's the big scene that I wanted you guys to know about. Pretty interesting that we've seen George in such a peaceful, acting way for all of the movie, and then we see another side of him that is willing to take, matters into his own hands because no one else will. And so George is an archetype. He's not just this homeless man. He's a silent saint. He's a spiritual Robin Hood, minus the theft. Because he doesn't steal things like Robin Hood does, but he's this moral counterweight. He's a man without an ego. He is a protector. And each costume that he wears throughout the movie represents a different archetype. The Easter Bunny is the innocence, right? Then we see him as a leprechaun, and that's the playful moral warning for foreshadowing in the movie. And then we see Santa Claus, right? When he sees the single mom getting exited out of this motel by this crazy dude, right? And so Santa Claus is very much the protector of children, if you will. Okay, and then we see the cowboy, the frontier justice, right? And then he's dressed as a soldier when he's talking to the teenager at the camp, and that's the unseen war, if you will. And then plain clothes, black gloves. Inevitability is what that symbolizes, just pure inevitability. And George uses absurdity to lower defenses. So when the teenager, for example, when the teenager says, "You look stupid," George says, "Well, that's the point." That line defines George. He disarms ego, he absorbs mockery, and he removes fear by removing image. And so, this is a feel-good movie. This is the good guys win kind of movie, but it gets a little dark. And if you will, it's kind of like World War II, right? It's a wonderful, patriotic, victorious story, but look at all that happened in between, right? A lot of dark, dark, dark stuff. So that's very much what this film is going to be kind of like. Good guys are going to win, everything's going to work out just fine, but there's going to be some crazy stuff that happens to get to that peace. So, there you go. That was the next scene in Talentment that I wanted to get over with you. I have some more stuff here too, but I don't think we'll have time to get through all of it, honestly. I don't think we'll have time. We have to wrap this up because, goodness gracious, it's almost time for me to go. I got another meeting right after this, so. But there you go. The new scene is in Canvas. Now, we'll do more analysis of breaking it down later, probably in our next class, because that scene in itself deserves, one or two hours at the very least of analysis and, understanding. So, but in Canvas, we will have the new scenes up. Go ahead and reread them. Come up with your own notes if you want. But either way, it's class is over. That's it. That's all I got for you guys today. I'm sorry, there's so much to cover. But thank you all for showing up, and we will see you at our next class. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, yeah, no problem. Let me help you with that, yeah. Now, a lot of my students have been having a problem with this platform, What happens is late at night, sometimes the platform, it shuts down, and so what you have to do